Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and it's Women's History Month, and I'm here today to talk to you about Reign, Season 1. This show came out in 2013. It's been about 12 years since this show debuted, and it was created by that of Stephanie Sengupta and Laurie McCarthy. And I love this show so much. This is what reinvented my love for period pieces. Because after a while, there weren't that many out when I was watching TV and stuff like that. And then this show came out on the CW, and it was one of the most popular CW shows of that time. This was around the time, I think, maybe before. No, wait. Because the Arrowverse came out before this. And the Arrowverse, in the comics and stuff, that's what dominated the CW towards the end. But then this show came out, and it just captivated people. It is so gorgeous and stunning and like breathtaking. You can't help but to get invested in this show and the lives of the characters. I was so intrigued after that first episode, which I reviewed, by the way, go watch that. I was so intrigued by the first episode, I went straight to Wikipedia after the episode aired, and I went to go look up Mary, Queen of Scots, and a couple of others. I decided just to like skim it and stuff like that. I'm all like, oh, so that's what happens to her and stuff. By the way, this review will only pertain to that of season 1. I've already recorded and edited season 3 and 4 as a whole. As the recording of this video, I have not rewatched season 2 yet, but hopefully I will get that out after this video and stuff. Because yeah, the first season is 22 episodes, and so is the second season. And yeah, so this was back in the good old days of television, broadcast television, where it's like 22 episodes or so, and you had to watch it week by week. It took about like 5 months or so just to get through like the show, and you was like truly living the good life of good old television back in the day before streaming ruined everything. Speaking of which, this is no longer on Netflix. It's no longer on the CW app. It is only on Prime. And so all the seasons are on Prime, but if people don't watch, trust me, they will take it off. Amazon has been deleting a lot of their content, and they've been losing the rights to others. Like, what is it? There used to be a show called Britannia I used to watch. When Rome invaded Britain for the second time and took it over. And it was on Amazon for so many years. And all of a sudden, when I went to go play it, because it's still up on there, and all the videos gone. It's all like, we have lost the rights, the copyright to like view this and stuff like that. Then there was a show called Absentina. They lost the rights to that. Sweet Valley High lost the rights to that. So yeah, when older stuff is like on Amazon, it's best just to like watch it when you can. Or you can buy this on DVD. Individual DVDs are around, anywhere between $14, $18. Or you can get the entire box set for $34. And it ran for 4 seasons. When I say that like this show reinvented my love of like period pieces, I'm not even joking. Because back in the day, I first got into like westerns in the early 90s with Briscoe County Jr. Then of course Hercules and Xena came out, and then Jack of All Trades. And so after Jack of All Trades, that was really it in terms of period pieces for me. I don't really consider Star Trek a period piece because it's more like a sci-fi thing. But after Jack of All Trades ended, like that's was really it. Like I didn't really see too many period piece shows and stuff like that. And I never really watched anything that had to do with like the French or British back in those period pieces. Even though Jack of All Trades was in this tropical, like, tribal place during the French Revolution, but like, that was about it. And that was more of a comedy and stuff. But like this show, it just like captivated me, man, to where I just started watching more and more and more period pieces. And not only that, but I became, just like most other people, very fascinated with, like, Mary Queen of Scots and Queen Catherine Medici and like Queen Elizabeth the First, and and so it took me a couple years later to finally watch things like the White Princess, the White Queen, the Spanish Princess. I couldn't get into the Tudors for some reason. It just, I don't know, I just couldn't get into that show. But for a lot of people, this was their gateway into like shows like that. And the sad part is, it is historically inaccurate. That's one of the huge downfalls of this show that a lot of people complained about back in the day, is how historically inaccurate this show is. They take some extreme liberties, even though a lot of these characters in the show are based on real people. About 90% are based on real people, and about 10, made up. But like the first, like, even though it's historically inaccurate, they still throw in tidbits of historical stuff for like reference and source and stuff like that. But the first two seasons were very inaccurate. The third, while still being inaccurate, they brought in a bit more historical references. Season 4 is probably the closest you will have to being a historic, like, by the books type show. Even though they still took liberties here and there, it's still the most historically accurate as opposed to like the other seasons. So that is disappointing when you're watching this show and you assuming that all this stuff happened, and then you realize a good chunk of it did not. And some of these made up characters like Carissa and Bash, you assume that they was based on real people, but they're not. They're totally made up. But like, Mary, Henry, Francis, Catherine, Greer, well, the four ladies in waiting, I'll say that, are all based on real people, even though they changed the names, the first names of all the ladies in waiting for the best, because Mary Queen of Scots, her four ladies in waiting, in real life, they was all named Mary. So that would have been extremely confusing if, like, you constantly hear the name Mary on the show and it's not the one you think it is. However, in the Serpent Queen, they did call the ladies in waiting Mary, but they were rarely featured, probably like in one episode or two at the most, and that's about it. So I am kind of glad they changed their names, and I do like the names they made up for them. The cast is amazing, and it's a wide variety of Canadian, Australian, and British like actors and actresses. I've only found one American actress in the entirety of like this show, and it filmed in Canada. And so, yeah, if you're not familiar with like the Stewarts, the Valois, and like the Medicis and the Tudors and stuff, then you're gonna be very confused, when watching this show. So it's always good to hit the internet and see what really happened, Also, they had to age up some of these characters because, Mary was a young girl when she became queen, 6 years old. They aged her up to be that of a teenager for the show and when she got married. I'm not exactly sure how old she was when she got married, but she was very, very, very young. Maybe 9, I think. I'm not 100% sure. And so they had to age up, like, Francis and Mary and the girl in waiting, a couple of other characters. So when certain things happen, like when you see like adults getting into them and stuff, it's just like, ugh, because it's supposed to be kids, but then it's like, ugh, they're still teenagers, though. But back in those days, sometimes they really didn't care. So this show follows the life of Mary, Queen of Scots, one of the most tragic royal figures of all time. This young woman has literally had to like run and fight her entire life because once she was in line for the English throne, the Tudors were not having that. And what makes it worse is that some of the people in Scotland didn't want to be ruled by that of a woman. She's been used by everybody, her friends, her family, her lovers, like it doesn't matter. She's been used by her mother, her brother, her in-laws and stuff, her cousins, and and it's just so sad because all she ever wanted to do was just be queen like she was supposed to. She's the Queen of Scotland, but she's also supposed to be next in line for the English throne. But there were complications because the princesses were illegitimate back in the day and they wanted to be queen. And I'll get into all that a little bit later. So I'll throw in some real historical knowledge and stuff like that. And so, she's lived that tragic life, and every time something good would come her way to where she can secure her own safety, the safety of Scotland, and becoming Queen of England, something will always happen down the line that will prevent that when it comes to that of her lovers and stuff. And and it's just so tragic, like so tragic. Now, the show, once I said before, like it's historically inaccurate, so are the clothes. They did not wear clothes that look like this. This is very modernized, and it looks exquisite. Like, I don't, like, I'm so glad they didn't go the historical route with the clothes. Sometimes I get tired of all those big puffy dresses. These clothes are amazing, and they help build on that richness of what the show is. The show is a romance drama, like soap opera type thing. And it's quite a shame they never made no more historical shows on the CW because this was truly a hit. But somewhere in the third season, they did something that was just kind of like off the wall. I'll spoil that. They started adding magic into the show. See, in the first two seasons, you're not quite sure if magic exists. You think it does, but in actuality, it doesn't. Then the third season, they experimented and added magic. And by the fourth season, they took the magic away. Also, a lot of these characters that you will fall in love with will end up leaving the show as the series progresses. Most of it is because they're trying to follow history, and other reasons is just completely unexplained to this day. We don't know why some of these stars left. There isn't much action in this show, which really pissed me off because I love action. I love sword fighting. But when they do have it, it's pretty good. In the first season, the sword fighting isn't that great. But by the third and the fourth, man, they got a great choreographer and everything. This show has also dealt with a little bit of controversy, not just because of the historical inaccuracies, but because the pilot, I think, had to be like re-edited on television because it was a pretty raunchy like love scene, and it was on television, not streaming. Also, something else happens in another season, which I still don't understand why they made that storyline. But the biggest strength of this show is the romances. There's romance everywhere. There are love triangles. There are hearts that are being broken. And you can't help but to feel for these characters because who doesn't want to fall like in love, you know what I'm saying? And these people badly want to be with their like who they feel are their soulmates, but it doesn't always happen the way they want it to. And so there's so much like, backstabbing and like lust for like a person, and oh, you can't have this person because you're poor, and this person is entitled, and and that's just how it was back in those days and stuff. Like, if you was like, say, like a lady in waiting, you couldn't, it isn't proper to just marry any old person. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to marry somebody who has a title and somebody who has money and somebody who is prestigious and stuff. So, like, getting with like somebody who works in the kitchen would not be good. Then, women had it very rough back in those days, especially the royal family and stuff. It does not matter if you are a princess or a queen. You don't get the rule. You know what I'm saying? Unless you are like the regent or something. Or you're like the only like living relative of that royal bloodline, like Mary was, to be like a queen. But if you have like a husband who is your king, that's it. He rules and everything. He does whatever he wants, and you're just his wife, pretty much. He's allowed to have a mistress, but if you mess around, then that's adultery, and that's treason, and they can have your head. And even more importantly than that is the dowry and everything. Like, prestigious women who are part of like, the royal family line or ladies in waiting, whatever, they have like a dowry. And they weren't allowed to spend their own money and do what they wanted and keep it in their, like, I guess you could call it like a bank account or something like that, because the husband controlled all that and stuff once like he married you. And it was so messed up back in those days how women did not have rights. And it's even crazier when princesses and queens didn't have no rights. Most likely, if you was a princess, if you wasn't married off to like a king or a prince, then you will never be a queen. You might get married off to a nobleman, but that's about it. And like, a lot of those people back in those days, they did not marry for love. They married to strengthen their country and stuff. And that's what Mary had to do. Like when the English throne went into like chaos. Oh my God, it always went into chaos. She was forced, by her mom to marry Francis of France because they needed the support of France because Scotland was the neighbors of that of England. And, everybody's always going like the war and this and that. So, if say like the king needed the resources of a completely different country, he'll have one of his princesses or one of his princes marry somebody in that country who is that of the royal bloodline and stuff. And it really sucks because even though they're prestigious and they have their wealth and everything like that, they didn't get to marry for love. And not only that, but a lot of these royal families were really broke because they was constantly going to war and, having to supply all that and, things. Now, the one crazy thing about this show, with all the historic inaccuracies, every time you will see something silly, you assume it's fake, like the bean queen. I just assumed that was fake. Like, oh, somebody put a bean in a cake and, people are trying to look and find the bean. And if you find it, you're a king or a queen for a day. That's real. And everything. So I was very shocked and surprised to like find that out. One other thing I was surprised to find out is that the current royal family in England, technically they are Tudors by blood, but not close blood range and stuff, the main blood range. that ended with Queen Elizabeth the First, back in the day. But the actual England royal family, like former Queen Elizabeth II, King Henry, I don't know which number he is, Prince Harry, Prince William, they're closely related to Mary, Queen of Scots. I had no idea because I didn't know my history of all that stuff back then. Like I've heard of Louis the Eighth, but that's about it. And I've heard of like no, not Louis the Eighth, but King Henry the Eighth of England. Like we all been taught about him in like school, but they didn't really go that far. And so I've always wondered like how is the current, who are they related to from back in the day if the line of Tudors ended with Queen Elizabeth the First because she had no kids. So I'm like, how the heck are they related? So I did some research and here and there, and it turns out that they're related to Mary because King Henry VIII had a couple of sisters, about two or three, and one of them, I can't remember her name, it was either Margaret or Mary, and she became the Queen of Scotland when she married the king and everything. He died, and Mary, Queen of Scots, is like, their cousins. So yeah, so it's like through the cousin like bloodline and stuff like that, but it's still the same bloodline, you know what I'm saying? Though when people think of the Tudors, they think of like the main ones that just, ruled England and constantly backstab like their family members to get the throne, stuff like that, and all the chaos that happened with the stuff that happened in the White Princess and White Queen, and oh boy, that was oh my god, dude. Anything to be at the head of the top. And when you watch this show and you see the cast and you see them riding horses and wearing these elegant like clothes and this a magnificent castle and all the stuff they have to do, you just can't help but to want to be transported back in those times and just experience it, you know what I'm saying? And see what they all had to go through. Unless you're like a person of color, like black, like I am, then you don't want to be there. You really don't. But then when you watch historical document type shows, then it's kind of like, ugh, that lifestyle is not all that like glamorous and everything. Like I was watching something about King Henry VIII and how there's I think something called like a stool boy or a bucket boy, and basically what it is, because they never show it on this show, and basically what it is a boy with a bucket and he follows the king around, and whenever the king has to poop he has to dispose of it. I didn't even know that. But apparently that's one of the best jobs to have, and everybody wants it because of the simple fact you get to follow the king around everywhere he goes, no matter what country he goes to and stuff. You meet other political heads, you get to hear all their conversations, and more importantly, you have the king's ear. He's more likely to talk to you because you're so close and his confidant because you clean his poop up. And so that's never shown like on this show and stuff. But it's fascinating to find that stuff out, And like when it comes to that of like the cast, like I said before, amazing. Like one of the things that also got me invested in the show is that there was two actresses that I recognized at that time. And Well, who plays Lola from the Chronicles of Narnia, and I can't quite say her name. What is it? I want to say Adeline or something like that. I have the hardest time saying her first name. Adeline, I think that's her name. Kane. I remember her from like Power Rangers RPM when she played like the villain hench girl and stuff. And I was very shocked to see somebody from Power Rangers get their own show because she is the lead. And but then later on, I might have seen Anna Green Gables from back in the day. I'm not sure. but Megan Follows is in this. And the dude who plays like, Henry, like Alan Van Sprang, I've seen him later on down the line in other villainous type roles and stuff. So it's really cool. Oh, and also Caitlin, um, what's her name? Caitlin Stacy. I saw her in another projects like down the line. So it's kind of cool when I like recognize people from this show and like, see them in other projects and stuff. And like I said before, the cast is just phenomenal. Everybody plays their part perfectly to where you think they're like real people coming off the screen. The first season mainly revolves around Mary trying to like secure her position of having an ally for that of her country, Scotland. It's mostly just her going through like trying to find like a husband because she's engaged to Francis, but there are complications and there are love triangles, so it mostly follows and revolves around that, like her falling in love trying to secure her country and like this huge love triangle and stuff. It also deals with religion. It deals with the Catholics and it deals with the pagans in the first season, not so much the Protestants. The Protestants will come much later in the rest of the series, especially in the third and the fourth. And so, 'cause, there were pagans in England back in those days, and it was a really difficult time when many of them was forced to convert to that of Christianity. And that was a major play in both like the English and the France and Spain type crown, Catholics versus the Protestants. Catholics, worship that of like the Vatican and the Pope, and the Pope is supposed to be like the second person closest to God or something like that, or the first person. And I'm not Catholic, and so like some people wanted to break away from that and stuff, and they became Protestants. So it was like this big war between like the two religions, and even still to this day, both religions can't get along and everything. The show also deals with the succession of power. Who is next in line? Who's going to try to take the crown? Who wants to keep the crown and keep all the power? So it's that huge power struggle, that power play. And that what makes these shows so fascinating. And that's what makes history so fascinating, especially when it comes to the Tudors. Now, the Tudors will not show up in the first season, but they will be mentioned every once in a while. I can spoil this too. They won't show up until the very end of the second season, and then they're prominent to the third and that of the fourth season. The first two seasons had an intro that was breathtaking. It was so strong, so powerful. It would start with like this narration from Notre Dame and talking about Queen Mary of Scots and how she was supposed to be like, seated on the throne and this and that, and how there are forces who are trying to stop it. And so and then it plays with this beautiful song called Scotland by the Lumineers. And like there's such striking visuals, some from the show, some made up. Some people say they ripped off Viking, the intro. Never seen Viking, I think except for the first episode. So I went and looked at the intros to Viking, and yeah, kind of similar. But this was the good old days of intros, and I love myself a good intro. I can watch an intro all day long. By the third season, it's just a title card. And so it really sucks when I got rid of the intro. Now, ironically, nobody in this show has a Scottish or a French accent. They all talk with a British accent. And that's how American historical shows like this always does it. And it gets on my nerves. Except for that of Jack of All Trades, where they actually tried to impersonate a French accent. And also the Serpent Queen does this as well, except for Diane Portier, because the actress actually really is French. But in this show, it's very frustrating to keep hearing you're from France, you're from Scotland, talking with a British accent. And but then it's like freaky when you actually hear somebody attempt an accent, because in this season and one time there's one person this season and then there's one person in season 4 who talks with a Scottish accent. And you just looking at that character and you just like, why are you the only one with a Scottish accent and nobody else does? So it's like freaky and then messes with your mind. So I'm going to start with the character bios, and I guess I'll start with the 4 ladies in waiting, who, like I said, in historical times were all called Mary. And the reason for that, I believe, is, strength and unity. I think Queen Mary felt that having somebody who will have her name will be a sign of good strength and good morals and and sisterhood and stuff like that. Ironic how she was able to find like 4 women or 4 girls with her name, you know what I'm saying? Prestige women at that too. Now in the Serpent Queen, they wore all white, but in the show they don't. I don't know what they wore in real life, but they are her 4 ladies in waiting, and they're all from Scotland. And these 4 ladies in waiting all knew Mary. They grew up with her and stuff, so she was extremely close to them. They even used to accompany her to France when she was a lot younger, and they would like play and run around the castle and all that good stuff. The first lady in waiting is Ailey, played by Janessa Grant. And she is the one who is kind of like we don't know much about. She's barely in the first season. The only thing we know about her, she's a kleptomaniac, and Queen Catherine wanted her to spy on Mary. Then, when Notre Dame is made like a prediction, this one character, Clarissa, wanted it to scare that of like Mary so she can be protected. And one of those predictions is, a girl dying and stuff. So she died. And it really sucks because it's like we don't know nothing about her that much, and she was barely on the show. So she got the short end of the stick. Ailey is based off of Lady Seton Greer, played by that of Selena Sidden, and she is based on that of Lady Mary Beta, I believe her name is. And so, like, Greer is probably the nicest of, like, all the ladies in waiting. She's very poised. She's very, like, eloquent and stuff like that. She doesn't try to, like, cause harm to people, but eventually she does. She is entangled in like a love triangle, just like all the other girls. At some point in time, all the ladies in waiting get put in these scandalous, like, situations and stuff. But just like all the other ladies in waiting, she, wants to fall in love. And so, like, the thing about Greer is that, like I said before, she's not outright like a vicious person or like a mean person, nothing like that. And she ends up falling for a kitchen boy. They just have, like, the hots for each other. And they're very much in love. Lymph is that of the kitchen boy. He starts off as a kitchen boy, and at some point him and like Greer start like a flirtatious romance that later turns into love. They really want to be together. Lymph is one of those characters that people tend to really like. Every once in a while he'll say something to piss people off, like in the fandom, but other than that, people really enjoy this character. He is a made up character who is like, built up as the seasons go. And all people want to do is see him and Greer together. Like, that's just the end game people want. You know what I'm saying? But sadly, he is that of a kitchen boy. And because Lola is, not Lola, but Greer is a lady in waiting, she needs to marry a very wealthy man, a man with that of a title, like a lord or a duke or a nobleman, something like that. And if she's really lucky, like a prince. And so she knows that, like, she shouldn't be with Lim, but like she does. But when reality starts to set in, and like, things start to happen because like she later on meets Lord Castleroy. And so he takes a liking to Greer despite the age difference. I'm pretty sure there's an age difference. I mean, he has gray hair. He might be younger and just has gray hair like some people do, but they've never explained it. And of course, he has to be an adult to be a lord. So, and she is a teenager, let's not forget. And so, like, he can provide everything that, like, she needs, you know what I'm saying? And she knows that. But the problem is, her heart is, attached to that of another. And so, because of that, of course, Lymph is going to get a little jealous. And I think something happened. I think Lord Castleroy was choking on food, and Lymph gave him the Heimlich maneuver. Because of that, like, he said something like, he's indebted to him and stuff like that. Something happens to that Lymph, and he gets in trouble somehow. I think Catherine finds out about Greer and like Lymph, and something else happens. I can't remember what, but Lymph is literally sent off to be in the military. And so, because of that, I think it was Castleroy who enlisted him into the military or something like that. I can't really remember. And so it was really sad to see that look on Lymph's face when you see him going off with the rest of the soldiers and Greer just standing in the window, really, really upset. She has now lost the man she loves, but she is engaged to that of Castleroy and stuff. And it's truly probably like the second best love triangle in the entire series, because this will go on for like many seasons and stuff between these three. And so, like, at some point in time, Lymph is like, in the military, and he meets that of Prince Francis. And so him and Prince Francis, I think he saved Francis' life on the battlefield. And so Francis decided to repay him by making him one of the Royal Honor Guards or something like that, like a really high-ranking knight in the French court. So when Lymph comes back, he starts up his relationship again with Greer. But the problem is that, like, she is engaged to Castleroy and stuff. But not only is she engaged to Castleroy, see, at one point in time, she was trying to get engaged to that of Julian Remy. And he's like, I can't remember his title exactly. I think he's a made up character. But like, he has a really high ranking title and lots of money and stuff like that. And so he was all smitten with that of Greer and, ready to marry her until he barged in and saw her making out with that of Lymph, having an affair. Because of that, he was like heartbroken and embarrassed, and he just left her. And so at some point in time, this is when she later on gets with Castleroy. And it's a really touching scene and a really heartbreaking scene because, she tells him she wants nothing more to be with him, but she can't. And that Castleroy will literally provide everything she needs. Castleroy has, he's gonna help, like, make sure that her sisters don't get pimped out by her father and everything, and make sure they get with a respectable man with a title and money. he's gonna pay off her father's debt and everything. Like he's really, throwing that money around just to make her happy and stuff. And he barely knows her, but it's just that she's so gorgeous, he just fallen in love with her. And so he can literally provide her with everything she wants. Whereas Lymph, even though he's a knight and everything, he doesn't get paid as much as that of Castleroy, and not to mention he doesn't have a title. And so, in a heated exchange, Lymph literally tells her, you know what, I'm done with you and stuff. Go be with him if you want to. And, I will not, like, chase after you no more. And one day I'm gonna make it in life. One day I'm gonna be rich. One day I'm gonna be able to provide for a family. And I'm still not going to want you. And he just like left. Leaving her even more heartbroken and stuff like that. Because the thing is, she doesn't really love Castleroy. She just likes him and likes the fact that he's rich and he can provide. But her heart will always be with that of Lymph. But sadly, she must now move on. And Lymph, he moves on to that of Castleroy's daughter. And so, yeah, that's gonna be a even bigger like drama in season two. But Lymph, he really is one of those noble, gallant type characters. He is a character people like and respect because for the most part, he's out of everybody in the show, he's not really a bad person. Like, the thing he said to Greer that pissed off like fans, you know, you gotta understand where the man's coming from. Like he loves her, and because he's poor, because he's a peasant, he can't have this really like fancy woman and stuff. And it really hurts because he legit fell in love with her, and she fell in love with him back. So it's not like a one-sided crush or anything like that. And I do like how they worked this character up from the bottom and made him like a respectable man. Lady Lola. So she is played by Anna Popplewell, and she is based off of Lady Fleming, or Mary Fleming, as you will. And so I love myself some Anna Popplewell. I've been a fan of her since those first two Chronicles of Narnia movies. And I've just been like a fan ever since. I've seen her in a couple of projects. She actually auditioned for Hermione in Harry Potter and lost out. She auditioned for Wendy Darling in the 2003 Peter Pan, but she lost out. And her brother actually got the role of one of the boys because she was reading lines for her brother, and they saw that and they liked him, and so they like added him to the show. I'm not sure, but the movie. And so like when she was cast in this show, oh my god, dude, like I was overwhelmed. Like I was just so happy and stuff because she's such a good actress. And so out of all the ladies in waiting, she's probably the most headstrong, who always ends up making mistakes as the series will progress. She is actually one of the few ladies in waiting to oppose that of Queen Catherine. And like, because Queen Catherine thinks she's the smartest of the ones, but she actually ends up making more mistakes than anybody else. Her and Mary have a touch and go type of relationship. She's the only one who really outright, like, has a disdain towards that of Mary because she is upset because of what happened in like the pilot. And so she's one of those lady in waitings that fans just don't really seem to like. Like you think you would dislike Kenna, but they actually dislike Lola a heck of a lot more, and especially as the series goes on. And so, but she's not really that mean or bad. It's just she makes a lot of dumb mistakes and she thinks with her emotions and stuff instead of thinking with her brain. And so The first thing that caused like a bit of a rift between her and Mary was that she ended up crushing on somebody who works in that of court. I don't know exactly who he is. He might be like a knight or something like that, or like somebody who works in the kitchen, or somebody. He's somebody. And Catherine did not want Mary to stay in court because she feared a prophecy that Mary would be the downfall of that of Prince Francis. And Queen Catherine believes in all these like superstition type stuff. So she finds that Lola is messing around with somebody who's basically a peasant. And so she forces him to commit a disgusting crime against Mary. He is to sneak into her bedchamber and assault her, like sexually and stuff. And so when the guards bust in and they find him, because this is all set up, he is in prison and he is to be beheaded in the morning and stuff. Lola is furious about this and she believes in now this prophecy that like Mary is like some type of angel of death and everywhere she goes people die and stuff because there are people constantly trying to assassinate Mary just like in real life. And so this dude was marked for death, but then, I think he was later able to escape. He was set free by somebody, I forget who. And because of that, he had to leave court and go as far away as possible because if the guards ever found him, he would have to be beheaded. So because of that, Lola is left heartbroken and stuff. But she later forgives Mary because she realizes it was Catherine all along. And so because of that, Lola has a disdain towards that of Queen Catherine. And so when Queen Catherine is in prison at one point, she uprights like just like talks down to her and stuff like that. The next biggest mistake that Lola faces is that when she was out and about one day and at kind of like this not really a brothel, I don't know what they really call it back in ye old times. It's kind of like a hotel type bar type thing. And she meets Francis. By this time, Francis has lost his title of being a prince and is now illegitimate. This never happened in real life, but they just made it for the show. So her and Francis decided to spend the night together at the same place. I guess maybe to save money or something like that. I don't know. But then it's like they end up sleeping together. And it's kind of like, whoa, hold up. This is one of your best friend's ex-boyfriend, ex-fiance, and you slept with him one time. It's like, what the world are you doing? Now, most likely, she probably had feelings for him, but could never act on it because he was Mary's. Him, on the other hand, in the first season, he was just horny and being with other women. And so, like, after that, they no longer did anything and they tried to keep it a secret. But when people saw them walking together, it made them look suspicious. And why would they ride in a carriage together? I guess friends just can't do that. And so she makes up this big story about how they met at this one place and they just decided to ride on back. Until Kenna is kind of like, oh, you know that place you said you met what's his name at? Yeah, it burnt down like a year ago or a month ago. And so Kenna is suspicious of Lola's activities with Francis. Eventually, Mary does find out and she is furious and everything. But now there's an even bigger problem. Lola is pregnant, and the only man she could have been with is not that one peasant dude, it was Francis. So she's carrying a royal illegitimate child in her belly. Francis has no idea, and she has not told him, but she has told Mary. Now that her and Mary has patched things up, Mary is going to try to find her a husband and try to pin the baby on him. And they kind of do. Since that of Julian Remy no longer wants that of Greer, he's now gone to that of Lola on the behalf of Mary. And he was kind of curious as to know why Mary kept trying to force him to be with, like, Lola. And so Lola finally just tells him straight up, hey, look, I'm pregnant and everything and blah, 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 blah. And so you might not want to marry me. But he's all like, I'll marry you anyway and I'll raise the child as my own. She's kind of suspicious of this, as why would a man who didn't want Greer because she fooled around with a kitchen boy would all of a sudden, like, want her, and she has a baby with another man. That's very scandalous back in those days. So she's kind of suspicious, but she doesn't really press on it that much. But she does somehow end up falling in love with that of Remy. However, things get even more suspicious when he's constantly asking her about her dowry. And so she doesn't understand until she did some digging, and he's really pressing on that, like, a lot, even to that of the bank. At some point in time, she keeps telling him, look, man, don't lie to me no more, but he keeps lying to her. He's holding some kind of secret. The secret is he's not even really Julian Remy. Apparently, he's like the royal scribe or something like that who writes stuff down. And so because of that, he was with Remy. But then the accident happened and Remy died. He hid the body out of fear and took his money, and somebody assumed he was Remy. So he just went with it, like, hey, maybe I can make some money out of this and everything. And so when the real Remy, like Julian Remy's, like, I guess uncle, whatever, comes to court because he wants to know, hey, my nephew or son or whatever he is about to get, I think it's a nephew, about to get married. Let me meet this woman and stuff. But then he finds out what's really going on. That what's his name is lying. He's pissed. He tries to fight him, but then ends up dying by accident. He gets like impaled by like a huge spike in the back or something like that. So now Lola is in love. I don't know if those two actually got married or not, but they're like, fiance, they're engaged. And so they come up with a plan to be all like, hey, since the real Remy ended up dying and nobody can find his body, let's just say an accident happened here. So she tells, I think she might have given him some money and told him go as far away as possible and just never come back and everything. And so you won't have to be beheaded. And she'll just have to make do with, her situation as is. So I think they set like the building on fire or whatever with the uncle still inside. He flees and we never see him again, and Lola is still left alone. At some point in time, she's still trying to hide her pregnancy and she's been away. And I believe Mary and what's his name? Bash took her to like a midwife. And because she's about to give like birth and all this other stuff. And Francis at this point in time still does not know. Problem is, a plague is coming into town. The Black Plague. Which technically does not happen in this time period during this decade. It happens the decade before and the decade after, because this show is set in the 1550s, and yes, the Black Plague lasted for a very long time in Europe, like a very long time, but it doesn't hit France in the 1550s, it hits it in the 1540s and the 1560s. So Mary is like scared because Lola is out there about to get like a virus, and she tells that of Francis. Finally, he now knows he has a child, and he's really pissed and upset that Mary kept this from him, and he leaves court to go and find Lola and risking that of getting infected, which is going to be a cliffhanger till next season. And, the thing about Lola is just like, you're pissed at her, but at the same time, you feel bad for her. Because she's the type of person who really just acts on her emotions. And this will continue as the series goes on. She will constantly make mistakes. She will constantly, like, leap before she looks and everything. And that's just how her character is. Kenna, played by that of Caitlin Stacy, and she is based on Lady Mary Livingston. And so she is kind of the most scandalous one of them all. She's a bit of like a vixen, and they give her like a vixen like quality. But she does have like an actual caring heart. Like she's not an entire vixen. It's just she's messing around with the king. And he's a grown man and she's supposed to be a teenager. Yeah. So like I swear to God, this actress looks just like Selena Kyle's Catwoman from like the comics. Like she really does, man. But anyway, Kenna starts up a relationship with that of King Henry. And so they're constantly fooling around, and he is falling for her. She's one of his new mistresses and stuff. King Henry in this show fools around a lot. Of course, this pisses off that of Catherine, and it technically should piss off Diane Portier, but we don't get much of Diane in this like show, which is really odd. Like if you watch The Serpent Queen, she's all throughout the first season because she is Henry's like main love, even though he is married to that of Diane's cousin, Catherine the Queen. And so you don't really see the riffle between that of like Diane and Kenna, but you see a little bit of it with that of like Kenna and Catherine a little bit. Kenna is just falling in love and she knows there's big perks that comes with being the king's mistress and stuff. She's a little spoiled and everything because when she starts to fall for him more and she goes to his bedchamber, she sees the initials of Diane in his floor and she doesn't like that. She's kind of like, yo, I'm younger than her and she's not going to be around much longer. She's never here. And if I'm now your new mistress, why is her name plastered all over your floor? And it should be my name and stuff. So she gets all stubborn and act like she doesn't want him and makes him jealous and everything to the point to where he decides, fine, he's going to redo the entire floor just for her. And so she's getting all kinds of perks and things that she wants and stuff like that. But it kind of makes the other ladies in waiting, when they start to find out what's going on, not so much like they kind of like look down on her a little bit. I think Lola or Mary looks down on her. It's one of them that looks down on her until they start being scandalous on their own. And then they kind of like, oh, I guess I can't judge you because I'm over here doing the same thing. Things are going really smoothly with that and her and Henry until Henry starts to go mad. And so because he starts to go crazy in the head, he dumps her for like another person. And he later forces her to get married to that of Bash. And if Bash does not marry her, he will behead his own son. Now, Bash is made up, so he's not even related to Henry and stuff, but he's the son of Diane Portier. So she has no choice but to marry him. But then she's all like, yo, I need to marry somebody with a title. So he gives Bash a completely made up title of like the Lord of like horses and hunt. And she's just furious and crying and doesn't understand what the heck is going on. And so, like, she's now married to Bash, and she does not want to be married to him. But by the next episode, she starts to like him for some bizarre reason. Not sure why, it just kind of happens. It would have been nice if it was built up. I mean, yeah, they did know each other when they was kids, but that's about it. But the thing is, Bash is considered like illegitimate because Henry had an affair on Catherine. And for the most part, people do not respect Bash. He's kind of like, the odd one out of the family. He's like, the black sheep of the family and stuff like that. Only because of he was born by that of another woman. But she does end up eventually liking him and stuff. And they do try to like, have like a real relationship. But Mary, if she's gonna be queen, she has to think dirty. So Mary finds something out, and she needs Kenna to go to Henry's bedchamber and find these documents. Kenna is doing it until she gets caught. And when she gets caught, she's forced to sleep with that of Henry. This is causing problems between her and Bash because, like, he's like, yo, you're my wife, but you're here messing around with my dad and stuff. But she has no choice because if the king says, hey, pull down your pants or pull up your dress, you have to back in ye old days or you get beheaded and stuff. And a lot of kings went both ways back in the day. And so, like, Bash understands that and he doesn't like it. Now, at some point in time, because of this whole entity called the Dark One or the Darkness, something like that, there's a man going around dressed in like these like animal clothes and he's killing people and stuff like that. He tries to attack this little boy, which is later saved by Bash. And so him and Kenna are gonna raise this little boy. But she doesn't realize, like, Bash killed this little boy's father. And so she actually turns into a much nicer person. She was always nice, but a little vixenous and stuff. And she really does care for this little boy she's never met before and wants to raise him. And she's going to protect him and stuff like that. It really does bring out a different side to her. And I'm kind of glad they did force her to marry Bash and take care of this little boy because before that, she just looked like like a scandalous heifer and everything, messing around with the king, and the king already has a wife and a mistress and everything, and here she is coming on in and taking over and stuff. So it was really good they humanized her by putting in this like subplot towards the very end of like the season that will later go on to until that of the next season. So let's get two minor characters out the way. There is Penelope. She is the bean queen and everything. Yes, that's a real thing back in the day. When I saw this, I'm all like, oh, this show makes everything up. That can't be real. Nah, it's real. So apparently, she slept with the head cook to find out where the bean is going to be in the cake. And she finds it, and so she is queen for a day. And because of that, Catherine's being really nice to her, which is odd because, it's Catherine. And so things start to go badly because this is the time when Henry started to go crazy in the head. And he really took a liking to that Penelope. This is what causes him to leave Kenna. And he is like falling for Penelope so much that he wants her to be his real queen, to the point where he's going to have to get rid of Catherine and all this other crap. And it's just kind of like, dude, what the world? Like, he really went nutty in the head, and she's taking full advantage of this. Catherine is realizing Henry's off his rocker and is going to have to eliminate him. So she pretends that, this poison is medicine, and she gives it to Penelope. Penelope doesn't give it to him. And Penelope is taking full advantage of this. She likes the idea she's going to be a real queen one day and stuff like that. Well, at some point in time, Henry kind of comes to his senses a little bit and they trick him and stuff like that for not wanting her. She ends up messing around with that of like some random like peasant person, and she pretends to be pregnant with Henry's baby. And so Catherine can tell she's lying and all this and that. And Catherine's all like, look, I'll take you out the tower. I won't have you beheaded, but I can use a woman like you. So I'm going to send you away to be taught by this one person who's entrusted by me. And you will be part of my flying squadron. Now, the flying squadron was a real thing. And back in like those days, they were Queen Catherine's like most trusted women to seduce men of power. There was about 40 or 80 of them, and Catherine basically pimped them out to tons of men, soldiers, knights, princes, kings, noblemen, holy men, like, men with like extreme titles and power, to pretty much weasel their way into their hearts, find out information, and get whatever Catherine needs. Yeah. Catherine was a pimp. And after this, we never see Penelope again. Olivia was an interesting character. Olivia just kind of popped up out of nowhere around the time Francis and Mary were really starting to get like to love each other and stuff like that. It turns out that she is like, Francis' ex. Catherine is the one who brought her back to court. She doesn't even like Olivia, but she likes Olivia a heck of a lot more than Mary, and she can control that of Olivia. So Olivia's job is to weasel her way back into Francis's heart. It kind of works, and they fool around a little bit, but he really does love Mary. At some point in time, this does cause a rift between her and Mary also. But then at some point in time, the castle gets raided by a group of men that are pissed off at Catherine and that of Henry because I guess like his son or brother or something was executed by the royal family and he wanted revenge, so he takes siege of the castle. And so this is when all the women, like, the ladies in waiting, Mary, Catherine, all them, they band together to take back the castle. Never happened in real life, but this is still cool. Now, there was something similar to this in the Serpent Queen, where like Prince Henry, who later becomes King Henry, I think like the third of France, who is the son, of course, of the royal family here in the show. You'll see Prince Henry in the last season, but the events that I'm about to say now never happened in this show, but they happened in the Serpent Queen. It's where Queen Catherine needs like the I can't talk. The what those people called, those religious people. Okay, they're not the Catholic people, Protestant. That's it. She needs this group of Protestant people eliminated because they're causing problems and stuff. And so she has Henry along with his friends massacre the crap out of them. In real life, events like this are very similar. There was a massacre, but it happened, I think, completely different. And I'm not sure if Henry was involved or not. Anyway, so the girls come up with a plan. They're going to get rid of the guys. And Olivia is part of that plan. She is supposed to wait in like a secret like compartment in the castle and let the rest of the ladies in waiting in. Because after all, because they're gonna poison like all these soldier men, right, with like alcohol, stuff like that, and or something like that. They're gonna do something, so they have to like make their escape. But then Olivia gets cold feet and decides to flee, and Mary and them are not able to leave that way, and they get caught. So in a way, we don't see Olivia for a very long time. So it's kind of like, what the heck happened to her? I just assumed she fled the castle and just left. Well, Bash finds her near some pagans and she's just completely out of it. She's looking ratty. Somebody's been attacking her. She's been mistreated, and the darkness bit the crap out of her and literally left his tooth in like her skin. And so he takes her back to court, and there she is nursed by that of Notre Dame. And she even kills like some type of pope or a pastor or a cardinal or something like that by mistake, because she had a nightmare, woke up, saw his cross, grabbed it, and stabbed it in his neck. She gets completely away with it. But because Notre Dame doesn't really do too much later on in the series, they decided to give him a love romance with that of Olivia, and they actually do fall in love. It takes a while for her to re-enter society because she's just terrified of people at this point, but she only wants to stay near Notre Dame. So at some point, she later re-enters society, and she wants to get like, be in a relationship with him and move on with him and probably get married to him. But he has a vision, and in that vision, tons of people are dead, and she is one of them from the Black Plague. He does not want this to happen. He tricks her, and he sends her away to be with like his family and stuff. And he does love her and wants to be with her, but he knows that her life will always be in danger if she's around him. And so after this, we no longer see her. It's quite an interesting thing they did with this character because it's kind of like it's a made up character. Her storyline should have just ended with her fleeing the castle, but they decided to give her a little bit more. They decided to, make the fans like this character because at first people didn't because she was hired to mess up the relationship of Francis and Mary. So I do like how they redeem characters like this because she's not entirely a bad person, but she did do some bad stuff in the beginning. Clarissa was a tragic figure in this show, completely made up. And she is the daughter of Catherine and some guy, like with a fancy title that she had an affair with. All completely made up for the show because this character never existed. She is a character who hides in the shadows and lives within the walls of the castle and all the secret compartments and stuff. When she starts off, she is the one who warns Mary of bad stuff happening and people wanting to hurt her. She can hear everything around the castle because she constantly like just, roam around the walls listening and stuff like that. She wears like a sheet over her face because like she's hideous and everything and nobody wants to be around her because she is very hideous. She has like a really huge birthmark near like her chin going up towards like her mouth and nose. And so like it's turned out that Notre Dame is the one who keeps her in the walls and takes care of her and feeds her and stuff like that because he feels guilty. Why? Because his father tried to surgically remove the birthmark from her face. This birthmark is the same one her father has, but he covers his up with a beard. And when, like, Henry finds out, I think he has that dude executed. Just straight up chops his head off and stuff. And so, like, because Notre Dame's father tried to surgically remove it, it left the birthmark with a very bad wound on her face. And so she just lives like, this bottom feeding dweller in like the walls. You can't help but to feel sorry for this character. All she wants to do is be around everybody else and more importantly, be loved by that of her mother. She is the one who kills Ailey and everything, trying to make Notre Dame's prediction come to life to scare Mary and everything, because she feels she has to protect Mary. This was one of the most intriguing parts of like her character in the show. But then, of course, they had to have some conflict with her character. Because she's not loved, she takes it out on her half-brothers, Prince Charles and Prince Henry. Now, in this version, Prince Henry and Charles are very, very, very young, around the age of 8 and 10. And so, like, what is it? So, when Bash was in charge and now a prince, he had his two brothers removed and placed in hiding because, people feared that people would come after them. And so, like, when Clarissa finds this out, she kidnaps the boys, and she's killed people in this show before. So she kills the soldiers, she kidnaps the boys, and she's gonna kill the boys. She's been playing with them before, like, in other episodes, but now she wants to kill them because the boys have the love and affection she never had. And so, like, She is tragically, murdered and everything like that. I forget how. I think somebody hit her in the head with like a rock. I forget exactly who it is, but she died. Now, at one point in time, she was giving a half face mask, kind of like the Phantom of the Opera by Mary, to hide her face. But she still just went mad and nutty in the head. And so when she died, they didn't even bother to bury her. The soldiers just like threw her in a pit full of bodies and left her there. And you assume she would like wake up and and seek her revenge. But the writers felt like, you know what, this storyline has played itself out. They could have went further with the character, but because she was made up, and probably because like the fans like kind of like this never happened in real life, they just decide, you know what, let's just axe the character and stuff like that. Now the actress in real life is actually very lovely, but they made her look so hideous for the show. And Notre Dame, he is a real character based on a real person and stuff. And he is Queen Catherine's confidant. He is her seer, her fortune teller. And so he believes he can see into the future by having these visions and premonitions and like predictions and stuff like that. In real life, he really believed that, and Queen Catherine fed on that. She truly believes in all that, like seeing to the future stuff and predicting the future and avoiding the future and stuff like that. She also had a couple of other fortune tellers as well. Notre Dame is not in the Serpent Queen, but a completely different character based on a real person who's very similar to this character. And so he's a really nice person. He is the one who does the narration in the opening and stuff. And he's actually married in real life to the actress who plays Greer. Even though they're like 10 years apart, but they're in love, they have a child, and so happy for them. And so for the most part, his character just gives like, predictions on based on his visions. He has a very strong, like manly voice and everything. And so Catherine trusts him more than anybody else. He predicts Francis will die, and he feels that it is because that of Mary. This is what causes Catherine to hate Mary in the show, because she's going to be the downfall of Francis. And so his vision is incomplete. And so, of course, like I said before, Clarissa made that one prediction come to life by killing Ailey, because one of the girls is supposed to die and stuff like that. It's supposed to scare Mary into leaving. In order for him sometimes to have a vision, he has to be on the blink of death, so he'll hang himself and have a person cut it right before he's about to die or whatever, so he can get like a vision. It made it seem like there was magic in the show, but that was never truly confirmed if his visions were truly real or not. It's kind of slightly, but not really, kind of, And so when he's mistaken about Francis' death and be all like, no, Mary will be alive with Francis, and like, they will have children and all this other stuff. This pisses off Catherine, and she threatens to have Notre Dame killed, because like now Mary has left him for Bash, and he is screwed, and he knows he's screwed. But then he started to have more visions and this and that. He's back to being Catherine's confidant and everything. And at one point, Henry, when he wanted to get rid of Catherine, said that her and Notre Dame had like an affair that never happened. And of course, when he saves Catherine's life and everything, this was causes her to like him again after she wanted him killed because of a bad vision and everything. And like I said before, he did fall in love with that of Olivia, and he went with Bash to get the man that like bit her and stuff like that. He's a really interesting character, and I wish they would have done more with him and stuff, especially as the series like progressed. King Henry II. So King Henry Valois was the king of France, played by that of Alan Van Sprang. And I've seen this man in a couple of other stuff after this show, like, and he always plays a villain. Star Trek Discovery, What's that show called? Something Mortal Instrument. Um, there's some show I talk. Oh, Shadow Hunters. That's it. He's always playing like a villain, and like the main villain and stuff. But I've actually saw him play a good guy once. And this one show, I don't even, I think it was like a Canadian show. The actress who played Lois Lane in Smallville had a medical show where there was like ghosts in the show and stuff like that. And he was like in an episode or something like that. I've never really watched the show, but it used to come on this one channel that somehow I was able to get through cable, which I don't know how. And they would like bring that show on, and I'm just kind of like, what the heck kind of show is this? Because nobody never talks about it. And so anyway, he is King Henry, and this version of King Henry, he's very stern, very straightforward, and really, really stubborn and mean. He plays this role phenomenally. And it was quite a shame when they got rid of this character this season because the show really did miss. Like it was something the show lacked. And I didn't appreciate it at the time when his character left, but he really brought this great villainous role to the show. Because he technically is like an antagonist, not so much a villain, but he is an antagonist, but like he was just really bold and strong, and I really missed him as the seasons went on and stuff. But he is like, the hot-headed like king and stuff. And like I said before, he's married to Catherine. He has Diane as a mistress and Kenna as a mistress. And he messes around with so many women in like the show and stuff like that. But he's constantly away, so you don't really get to see him that much in the show. And I guess that's kind of why I didn't care when his character left, because he was barely like in the show. And so, and the Serpent Queen, he's a lot nicer, but becomes paranoid after a while. See, the thing about him is so funny how so similar he is to King Henry VIII of England. Both are married to like, women that would become like their queens, and like for the longest time they could not have any kids. They tried and they tried and they tried. But for so many years they couldn't. I think until they finally were able to have some and male heirs, because of course they didn't want no female to rule over their kingdoms. Both were injured in like a joust, and both later on had hot tempered like tempers, and like they was paranoid and stuff like that. And so I think it was 10 years him and Catherine could not make a child. And then they finally did with Francis. And he became the king because his older brother, who was originally married. No, I'm trying to think. No, I'm thinking of somebody else. No. I'm thinking of King Henry VIII. Okay, so King Henry II, his older brother was supposed to like, I think be king or something like that. But his brother died, and they assumed his brother died from poisoning from one of Catherine's people and stuff. Her like perfume guy or something like that. Because they said the Italians are known for poisoning people, and Catherine is supposed to be known for poisoning a lot of people. So his brother, I believe his brother's name was Francis, and he died. And so like, at first, there's no mention of any of this until later on in the season when Henry goes mad. And so, like, he loves his son Francis and he loves Bash, but then he turns on Bash because after, like I said before, the whole him and Diane Portier thing is non-existent really in this show. So, him and Diane Portier, she's supposed to be the main mistress of Henry and his most like advised confidant. She advises him on like strategy when going into war and stuff like that. But it's never shown in this show. If you want to see that, watch The Serpent Queen on Stars. And so like, Diane is the cousin of Catherine. They have Bash in the show. They are pagan, Diane and Bash. But in real life, Diane was a Catholic and stuff. And so Diane has a little bit of a ruffle with that of Catherine. Catherine wants Diane to poison Kenna, but she doesn't. And so she banishes, like, Diane from like the castle and this and that. And it's just kind of like none of this is playing out the way history did. But Henry does love Bash and he allows him to be in court. Until he turns on him. Now see what happened was Catherine doesn't want Francis and Mary to be married, so she finds out that her and Bash like each other. So she tries to have her get away from Francis, but then she goes to Bash. And the problem with that is if Mary marries Bash, he would have to be legitimized. So Henry decides to take away Francis' title and give it to that of Bash, causing all Catherine's kids along with Henry to be illegitimate. And they have like 10 or 9 kids and stuff. And so you would think that you would see Diane be around more during, Bash being a prince, but she's nowhere to be found. And they really dropped the ball with this character. But anyways, because they gave all her good stuff to like Kenna. So anyways, when Henry switches back like the prince title back to Francis, he wants Bash like gone. This is when he starts going crazy in the head. He tries to have his own son murdered and stuff like that. And people are realizing that he's just being cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He wants to invade that of England. At one point, he wants Mary to marry him when she's engaged to Francis. Now, in real life, they never got married, nothing like that. He did say in real life, Mary's one of the most beautiful people he's ever seen, even though she was a child. And this is what originally caused Catherine in real life to dislike him and other stuff. Plus, Mary was a queen and engaged to her son, and so, stuff like that. And so at some point, he even has like his soldiers fire upon one another on a boat, killing them and stuff. This is the point where everybody in the French court, like the main characters, know he needs to be stopped. But they can't stop him because that's treason and they will be beheaded. So Francis takes it upon himself to be the other knight in the joust. The joust is what caused King Henry's life. There's a piece of wooden shrapnel from like the joust stick, the lance, to get stuck, wedged inside of Henry's eye, going all the way back to his brain and everything. And it's around this time that he starts to talk about his brother to Francis. Because at some point he starts seeing his brother's ghost. Now, when we start seeing this young teenage boy with like a racket in his hand, we don't know what the heck is this about. Because if you don't know your history and stuff, and I did not know my history at that time because it's not my country, you know what I'm saying? But like, he tells a story of like, I think how he had his brother killed or something like that, and then he named his son after him and stuff like that. Now, when you watch The Serpent Queen, you'll realize why he has a racket in his hand and stuff like that. So basically, him and his brother were playing tennis. They always had this rivalry about each other. His brother did not like Catherine. They used to play tennis, and then all of a sudden, on the tennis court, he collapses. And because the Italian perfume dude like attended to him and everything, they assumed he poisoned him. And in that Serpent Queen show, it was actually Catherine that poisoned him and stuff like that because he was standing in the way. In actuality, I think he just died of a regular disease, but they assumed back in the day it was poison. The perfume dude had to be beheaded and like, stuff like that. And so Henry dies on the show. And like I said before, the other seasons, they needed him big time, but he's gone. And now Francis is now the king. Queen Catherine Dici, played by that of Megan, follows. She is best known for playing Anne of Green Gables. Man, she is the true villain of this show. No matter how much other bad people do, she is the true villain. She is ruthless in this show. She is so well cast that every scene she's in, she steals the show. Like, she literally steals the show from that of Mary. That is how good this character is and stuff. Now, in real life, the real Queen Catherine was a mean woman. It is said that she had people poisoned. It is said that she caused the massacre by poisoning like these soldiers and stuff like that. Nobody knows if that's true or not, but who knows? So in this show, they decided to play on that. They decided to play on Catherine's love of poisons, her love of cruelty, and like her love of manipulating people. She will manipulate anybody. Whatever she wants, she will try to get. And whoever she hires to get what she wants, well, they're a loose end and she has to have them murdered. She has so many people murdered in this show, it is not even funny. From French soldiers to Scottish soldiers to just random people and stuff. She just will, to make sure she's not implicated, she will have them executed. And so she hates Mary to death. And that's because in the show it is prophesied Francis will die if he marries Mary. And so because Notre Dame gave her that prediction, it has caused her to have a vendetta against Mary. In real life, like I said before, it's because her husband's all like, oh, she's so beautiful. Of course, because, she's engaged to her son. If anything happens to Henry, Mary becomes queen, and she doesn't like that. She also doesn't like the idea of having another monarch rule over her and stuff, because she's had to work extremely hard to get where she is. She was the daughter of a nobleman in Italy. She's Italian, and so like her family is like hated, at least her parents are. She was put in a convent full of nuns. Her uncle, the Pope, decided to arrange a marriage between her and that of Henry. She couldn't get her cousin was standing in the way and everything, Diane, and then she couldn't get pregnant. So Henry was getting fed up. Plus Henry was just so in love with Diane. And so when she finally was able to make a child and she became queen, she decided ain't nobody taking over her power. And so that's kind of how this version is as well. And so because of that, her and Mary are rivals. And then at some point they do patch things up only to be rivals again in the next season. So her and Henry made it to where if Mary doesn't have a child with Francis and they're married, then France will take over Scotland. Mary finds this out and wants the documents. And so this is when she has Kenna go into Henry's bedchamber and get the document. When Catherine finds this out, I think she has somebody executed or something like that. Now, when she tries to get Mary away from Francis, it works, but she goes in the arms of Bash. This is a problem. Because of that, she has to divorce that of Henry, and Diane's going to get married to him. She gets imprisoned and everything, and Henry wants her executed. And I think Henry, and it's funny because when she's supposed to be executed, she plans out her execution. She wants certain flowers. She wants her head tilted a certain way. She wants the executioner to hit her a certain way with the axe to kill her and everything. It's a really hilarious scene. But she eats it up. The woman's about to die, but she's going to plan out her funeral and live her life out as a diva and everything. When she is in prison, this is when she goes crazy and, she starts threatening the ladies in waiting and everything. She's able to get herself out by bashing her head in and going to the infirmary. And so this is when Notre Dame is, trying to help her and stuff like that. And Then there's the whole being queen situation and everything, and like, and they find out about like her actual real affair, and because the queen is not allowed to have an affair. If she does, she can be beheaded. The king can bounce around with whoever he wants, and it's completely okay back in ye old days. And so, like when Mary's soldiers come from Scotland on over to like France, and she mobilizes them to protect, like Scotland, and I think take over England or something like that. Catherine finds out by sleeping with like one of the soldiers. He doesn't know she's a queen because at this point in time, Penelope is the queen. So when she finds this out, she has all of Mary's soldiers executed. They go to like a brothel. The soldiers go in, they kill everybody, they burn the place down. When Mary finds out, she is furious. She also helps plot the death of Henry. She is just ruthless in this show, man, but you can't help but to love her and everything because of how the actress plays her. The love triangle between that of Mary, Frances, and Bash is truly what made the first season so memorable. It is so much passion, it is so much love, it's so much regret, and it truly tore the brothers apart. And I wish it could have went on into more seasons, but they didn't. Because, they didn't want it to be too historically inaccurate, but it is historically inaccurate. But hey, it made for the first season of this show. It was gripping, and you really wanted to see where it was going to progress. And it goes on for pretty much the entire first season. And the thing is, Mary loved them both. Both guys loved her. Both brothers grew up completely different. One grew up to be very like fancy and posh and like elegant and like a Catholic. And the other one grew up to be despised. He was a pagan. He didn't dress in the best clothes. He preferred being out like in the forest and everything. It's like two completely different sides, you know what I'm saying? But she loved them both equally and stuff. Prince Francis, later on King Francis, he is played by Toby Regbo. And so like in this version in the show, he is very much a manly man. He is like very strong, very poised. Can fight, like all kinds of stuff that will make a person like, he's that Prince Charming type person, you know what I'm saying? He's easy on the eyes, he's caring and everything. In actuality, he was a nice guy. He did love Mary, but he was not this strong, buoyant, gallant type person because he was very sickly and everything. Like he was in bad health and was constantly bedridden for most of his life and stuff because he was just always constantly sick. And so but in the show they decided to make him more manly and everything. And so him and Mary have known each other since they was kids. They've been engaged since they was kids, and they're supposed to be wed. When she comes back to France, when she's much older in the show, she realizes he's just like his father. He messes around with tons of girls. And she doesn't like it because she wants to act, because she really is in love with the dude and everything. And she wants to marry him and strengthen their bond for their two countries. It's a lot of touch and go between those two in the beginning because when he does decide, hey, I'm kind of going to be a little faithful, but then he doesn't and stuff like that. He realizes he's losing her because she falls in the arms of a completely different man who she wants to marry, who she's hoping he will help take care of her country. I forget this guy's name, but he's a character in the show. And Francis ends up killing this dude because how he treats Mary and stuff and how he treats his servants. And so This causes him to wake up and be all like, you know what, I'm gonna lose this amazing woman and everything if I don't get myself together. So he starts to be a better fiance to Mary, and he really does fall in love with Mary. Like, that is the truest thing. When those two are together, he really truly loves her and stuff. But he can see once this whole Olivia thing starts to come into play that he's starting to eyes are starting to wander. And but then he starts to get jealous when he sees that of Mary and Bash hanging out, talking, getting drunk, and they kiss. This infuriates him and stuff. But to make matters worse, his title is stripped of him and he becomes illegitimate. It is during this time that he leaves court and messes around with Lola and stuff. And he has no idea he has a child growing in her belly. And so he has to watch now as his brother is like about to be the new king and is with the woman he loves. And she now at this point truly loves that of Bash. You can't help but to feel sorry for this dude. But then when his title is given back to him and Bash just can't get along. They're now fist fighting with each other and all kinds of stuff. And he just straight up hates that Bash. But he later on forgives Bash when Bash saves his life. See, Francis and Bash were looking for the darkness. And when Francis went walking out, he fell down in an ice lake and everything. There was like a weak spot, and he fell down in the cold water. It was that Abash who saved his life, and it caused those two to reconcile and everything. He later befriends that Aleph, and he later fought in a war to take over Cali to advance that of France when it coming to that of England. This never happened in real life. He didn't fight in no battle. And so, he also didn't fall in no ice water like that. So they really took liberties with this character in the first season. And so, of course, he is the one who, kills his father in, a jousting, duel and everything. He realized his father was becoming too mad, too crazy, and he had to end it. Because of this, he is now crowned king and everything. But now, sadly, he has to leave his wife. Once he finds out Lola is having his child, he leaves the castle, but there's a plague going around, and he doesn't know it yet. And I'm glad in some ways they changed this character in the show, because in the Serpent Queen, he's just like this ill bedridden type person and always coughing and wheezing, and they made him into a character you can like in Rain. So they changed him for the better, but it is historically inaccurate. Sebastian, better known as Bash, is played by Torrance Cobb. He is completely 100% made up. He is the child of Diane Portier and King Henry II. He is, illegitimate because of that. But he still is close in court. But people don't like him. People despise him. They spit at him. But Mary has a fondness for him. So does Francis, because that is his brother. But like I said before, the love triangle tore that apart. And so when he was legitimized, he had to wear fancy clothes and this and that. And he wasn't used to doing that. He felt very uncomfortable by that. Not only that, but when his father was away and Catherine was in the dungeon, he became the acting regent. And he had to be the judge against all the problems that are going around in the kingdom. Something he was unfamiliar with because he has not been trained in how to do stuff like that. And so a woman tries to assassinate him. They assumed it is Catherine. Now, at one point, Catherine did try to have him killed, I think. But I think also it was Henry also because, like I said, Henry was going crazy. Besides all the love triangle type stuff that was going on, the actual real storyline they gave him is way more fascinating. He has a secret. What is that secret? He's pagan and everything. And this is a big no-no for the people in France because they're Catholic now. And so, like, paganism used to be all around back in the day until Christianity took it over and stuff. And so, I'm not really sure when Catholicism came in. Actually, no, I don't know too much about the pagans in France and the Catholics. I know in England and in Greece and stuff like that, it was, I have a little bit more understanding of it, especially with Caligula and, like, and how Rome took over England at one point and stuff like that. So I'm not really sure when it comes to France, but that's his big dark secret. He's pagan and stuff. So whenever he starts seeing these pagan marks and symbols, he knows that these are warnings and this and that. There are people dying. There are people being hung and killed in like the woods and stuff. This is because of pagan activity. This is what alerting the French court and the Catholics and stuff. And so the pagans have decided to create this one person called the Darkness. It's a man who dresses up like an animal, going around killing people and biting people. And whoever he marks, that is who's supposed to die next. Well, Mary got marked at one point. And so because Bash interrupted a pagan ritual and everything, he has now been tasked with the one supposed to kill the next person and stuff. It's a really interesting plot line that they gave him, especially when Mary's life becomes in danger. So he ends up killing a man because they don't know who's pagan and they can infiltrate the castle very easily. And so he's not going to kill Mary. And when he finds out he can kill just any ordinary person, he kills the person who gave him the message. This turned out at one point to be the father of like this little boy that he saved and everything. So his whole storyline is basically wrapped around constantly going into the woods, killing people, cutting down people from like being hung and stuff like that. Like I said, it's very fascinating. He's the one who finds like Olivia, who leads him to this person known as the Darkness and stuff. This is what causes him and Francis to reconcile. And as he's hunting down this person, like he saves this boy, and so he didn't even know he's the one responsible for this boy's father's death, and him and Kenna has now taken him in. Like I said before, he is forced to marry Kenna, and it's something he does not want to do. And at some point he decides, all right, he is going to love her, but the problem is his father will not stop messing around with his wife. When his father forces him to watch the consummation of Mary and like Francis, he tells him this is something you will never have and you should never try to get it again. And when he did try to get it again, this is when Henry tried to have him killed. And he hates seeing that of Francis and like Mary together to the point when he sees them kissing, it enrages him, but also makes him horny to the point where he clickety clacks with that of Kenna a whole lot more. But she can tell his heart is someplace else, And I like how complex his character is in the show. Like, cause he's a made up character. They could have just made him into another like stuck up, like posh type person, but they didn't. Queen Mary Stuart of Scotland, better known as Queen Mary of Scots, played by that of Adeline Kane. She did a phenomenal job in this role, and it's shocking because she came from Power Rangers, but she's an Australian actress, and a lot of these European stars are a whole lot better acting than the American Power Ranger star, so that is probably why. Queen Mary, boy, is such a tragic figure. Like, when you get into my season 3 and 4 review, you will see how tragic she is. But the thing is, she's a very bold and proud Scots. She loves her homeland so much, she will do whatever it takes to preserve her like country and stuff. She is a bold monarch. She's headstrong. She doesn't like being pushed around, and she has so many obstacles in her way. She has constantly people trying to assassinate her. She has like the French court at her side, but the queen does not like her, the queen mother. Um, she has this huge love triangle. You know, Francis is supposed to be her husband and protect her kingdom, but he's too busy messing around with other girls. She ends up falling in love with his brother, even to the point where when the prophecy starts to be too much, she decides to flee with Bash. And they literally leave the castle, leaving Francis heartbroken as he's running behind a horse and collapses on the ground, begging her not to go. There's one of the coolest scenes ever where her and Bash jump off a cliff and into like a river or a lake because they're trying to evade soldiers but are later captured and stuff like that. Even though she was born in Scotland, she's barely lived in Scotland. Like, she left at a very young age and had been living in the French court ever since. Now, in the show, they had it to where it said she visited when she was a child, but she later left and came back as a teenager, living with nuns and this and that. When they found out where she was at the monastery, they tried to assassinate her, and she had to flee back to that of the French court. She's lived in France for most of her like life, and it's to the point that when she engages with Scotland soldiers, they don't recognize her as the true queen because they feel like she's more French than she is Scottish. And so she informs them, like she lets them know and everything. I can't talk. Informs them. God, it's cold. My lips are sticking together. That she is every much Scottish as they are, and she loves her country, and she will rise up, and she has done everything in her power to protect Scotland. She has moved on over to France. She was engaged to that the prince. She is gonna marry the prince and everything. She tried to stop, like, you know, France from taking over Scotland if she didn't have a child. She is trying to stop England from taking over, like, you know, Scotland and everything. She has done everything in her power at a young age to do what she needs to do for her kingdom. And this really inspires the soldiers where they've been waiting for her to say stuff like that and be their queen and everything. But then those soldiers got executed by Catherine. Now, her uncle, the Duke of Guise, he shows up and he tries to help her out in the show, even though the uncle in the show is not her real uncle in real life. They always came up with all these different characters and stuff. Anyway, her and her mother have a very rocky relationship in the show. See, her mother is the one who helped arrange this marriage between that of Francis. Her mother knows if she marries Bash, then like this is not gonna help Scotland and everything. So her mother literally manipulates the whole flipping again of her going back to Francis and leaving Bash. When Mary finds this out, she has her mother banished from France and everything. This never happened in real life, and her mother actually have a very great relationship. But they changed it for that of the show. And like I said before, because she loves Francis to death, but when he was messing around with other girls, she went with another guy. I forget this guy's name, but he started to mistreat his servants and talking about like, Mary, if you don't do what I tell you to do, then I'm going to punish my servants a heck of a lot more. Because of this and his abusive relationship to that of Mary, this causes that of Francis and that Bash to kill him. And this is Francis' first kill in the show. She loves her ladies in waiting, and she will help them out no matter what. When her and Lola have that rift, they start to reconcile their friendship because, you know, she's starting to realize that, like, you know, this was just like a mistake made by Lola, and that is her friend. And at one point she's gonna leave Francis for Bash and all this other stuff. She really does have true feelings for Bash, and like I said before, it made for one of the most tantalizing, romances in like the first season and stuff. However, Mary can't keep her hands clean for too long. She realizes if she's going to be the queen, and she's going to have to do whatever it takes to be the queen, even if it means playing dirty at times, or even if it means causing people to die or having certain people framed or whatever. This is a lesson she learned from Catherine and stuff. And Catherine later told her, you're going to have to take charge and get your hands dirty if you're going to have to be queen. And this is exactly what she has to do. It's not something she wants to do, but is literally, if she wants to be stay queen of Scotland, be the queen of France and queen of England, she's going to have to do whatever it takes. This does start to change her a little bit. She starts to be more bold. She's more confident in everything. And she realizes she can't always be nice and make people happy, because it's not going to get her what she wants, and it's not going to give her kingdom what she wants and stuff. Now, the whole reason why this whole thing came about is because of, well, what is going on in England around this time? Because, see, the thing about the people in Scotland, they don't want to be ruled by a woman, but, Mary is the legitimate daughter of, the royal bloodline and stuff. And so we actually do get to meet her brother in this first season. Her brother James, her half brother, who's illegitimate, he's played by this one actor, I forget his name, but then in season 4, he's played by a completely different actor. The way they portray him in the show is not entirely accurate in history. He looks like he's a schemer and everything, but then he later, is allies to that of Mary. In actuality, he is an ally of Mary, but he also plots against her multiple times because he's jealous and he wants her crown. The only problem I have when in terms of character development, say like with Mary and a few other of the female characters, is that they don't always move their plot forward for themselves. Like, take Kenna. She didn't scheme and want to take over as Henry mistress. He just decided to find interest in her and stuff. It would have been more compelling if that was her plan all along. And say because it's different from that of Francis. Francis literally had to work hard to regain Mary's trust because he kept messing around with other girls and stuff. And he just acted like he wasn't interested. He moved his own story forward. You know what I'm saying? And so that is kind of odd. Like, some of the female characters don't really move their story forward unless somebody else moves it forward for them and they have to react to the situation. Now, Lola moved her story forward because she messed around with Francis and stuff like that, but it just would have been nice if, because some of the female characters really have to get pushed into doing something instead of it happening or them making something happen for them. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like with Mary constantly going in the arms of other men, it's only because Francis pushed her away. You know what I'm saying? It's not like she had doubt in her mind and wanted to pursue other options, But all of this has to do with the Tudors over in England and stuff. See, King Henry VIII died. And when he died, he left a couple of people in line of succession. But there was a problem. See, his eldest daughter, that of Queen Mary of England, better known as Bloody Mary and everything, she technically should have been in line for the throne, but she's a woman. So it went to that of her, his son. The son was very much, I forget his name, but the son was very much like his father, only wanted a man to rule. he does not have any male heirs. He died when he was a teenager. So the line of succession could only go to certain people. It could either go to Bloody Mary, Queen Elizabeth I, Mary, Queen of Scots, who is their cousin and has bloodlines of the Tudor in her because she's cousins and stuff, or to their other cousin, Jane, Lady Jane. Now the king decided to change what, like, cause see, here's the thing. King Henry VIII said, if his son dies, let it go to that Mary, Mary of England. And cause see, the thing is, Mary of England was the Spanish Queen Catherine's daughter. Her and Catherine and Henry, you can just watch the Spanish Queen, or no, the Spanish Princess, I think what it's called, to find out more about that. And so basically, he didn't want her no more, and he wanted Anne Boleyn. So he divorced that of Catherine. So there's too many Catherines, there's too many Henrys, there's too many Charles and Francis. It's so confusing, especially over in France. But Catherine of Spain, who later lived in England and everything, she's gone, she left. And then there's Queen Boleyn, and she is the mother of Elizabeth I. But Henry had Boleyn executed because of treason. Supposedly she was an adulterer, but this was made up just so somebody else can take the line and everything. And so she was framed. And so because of that, Elizabeth is illegitimate. And so Mary of England and Lady Jane had a civil war. It was about to be a civil war. See, Mary's brother, he changed the whole thing to where he added and her, meaning Lady Jane, saying that, he doesn't want, it's so complicated. Okay, so here's the thing, right? This is so complicated. I forget the brother's name. That's why I haven't named him. But he's the king. He's Catholic. And Mary Tudor is Protestant. No, crap. The king, he is Protestant and everything, I think. And Mary Tudor is Catholic, and he does not like that. And so, he refuses to give her the crown. So he added in his will or proclamation, whatever you want to call it, to add her being Lady Jane, who is not Catholic, I believe, or something like that. It's confusing. Anyways, she is the cousin, and she is a lady, and she's a teenager. And she doesn't even know how to be queen and everything, whereas Mary has been taught. And so when he dies, nobody knows he's dead. The royal people in the court won't let nobody know because they fear Mary will take over. And so Mary at some point flees, right? And they later bring in Lady Jane. Lady Jane at this point has been training to be like a queen and this and that. It's literally kind of like a coup almost and everything. All schemed up by that of the Privy Court and that of Jane's father. So Jane is now the forgotten queen of England, who only lasted as queen for about 9 days or so. I think she's only 15 years old, but she was literally only queen for 9 days. She shouldn't even really be queen, honestly. It really should have went to Mary and everything. And so during this time, Jane has now taken over, people now recognize her as queen, but some feel like Mary should be the queen. While Mary is away, she's rallying up the troops. She's getting Catholic, nobles and Catholic sympathizers to aid her and everything. She literally forms an army, but they don't have the best gear. They don't have the best weapons, the best armor. It's gonna be a heck of a fight. Whereas Jane, who was forced to marry like a peasant dude and he wanted to be king, but she's like, nah, I'm gonna make you a duke. This is something Jane never wanted, but then later on, it started to get to her, I'm gonna be queen, so I'm gonna make you a duke, because if I don't and you be king, you're gonna rule over me, and I ain't having that. She had the best weapons, the best soldiers. She had cannons. She had the best armor. So it looked like, she was gonna win, but she made the biggest mistake. There's this guy who helped set this coup all in place, and she ordered him to be with the troops. He was he was like an army strategist and everything. I can't talk, my lips are freezing together. He was really good in strategics and stuff like that. And when he left, things started falling apart. By this time, Mary was gaining more ground and everything. More people in the Privy Court started to fear that, heck, if they lose, Mary's gonna have them executed. So they flopped and everything. They flip-flopped. More and more and more of them started to leave and aiding that of Mary. And Jane literally found herself locked in a room with that of her husband. And basically, people she can't really trust anymore. So as war is about to break out and everything, they later just surrendered or whatever. And so Jane thought, whoo, this is over with now. I never wanted this. Can I just go back home and be a 15-year-old girl? Well, Mary ain't having that. And there's a reason why they call her Bloody Mary. See, Mary was not going to give up her crown or anything like that. And she couldn't risk anybody else who is legitimate in the eyes of the royal succession to take over. And so since some people in England and everything wanted Jane to be queen and still saw her as that, she had her put in the Tower. Her dad was not prosecuted, but then later on he tried to take over again. So her father was executed, her Jane was executed, and Jane's husband was executed on the same day. Then Mary decided, crap, I gotta deal with Elizabeth now, because she's the daughter of Anne Boleyn and she is now illegitimate, but she could become legitimized and everything. And not only that, but Mary is that of a Catholic and Elizabeth is Protestant. And a lot of people in England around this time were becoming Protestant. Because Henry had gotten away from Catholicism and stuff like that. Catholicism, I can't talk today. And so Mary had Elizabeth put in the Tower. And so Mary married that Philip of Spain, but he didn't like her because she was so old and everything. And she kept trying to get pregnant, but she had phantom babies and everything. Basically, what people believe now is that she had cancer, a tumor growing in her stomach, and this is what caused her stomach to look like she was pregnant. People made fun of her because of this and this and that, and Philip just didn't want her because he didn't find her attractive. He didn't even really care when she later on died. And they mentioned she died in this show, and they mentioned how Elizabeth has now taken over and stuff. It's so complicated. But the reason why Mary is a threat is because Mary is their cousins, and many see them as, because Mary is still legitimate and Mary is a queen, whereas Mary Tudor and Elizabeth Tudor are both illegitimate and everything, and so and Jane, of course, is executed. And so, because of that, some people in England and France and Scotland feel like Mary is the true queen of England, and this is gonna cause problems for Mary down the road and down the road of this series. So yeah, the show might be that of historically inaccurate and everything. Yeah, they made some characters up and they put them in certain situations that's just never happened to them in real life. People did not know that at the time because people really didn't know the history of England, France, and Scotland and stuff. And of course, as time passed on, people did. But even so, this show still has its hardcore fans. People just won't turn on this show, despite how like historically inaccurate it is. They didn't care because the show gave them, gave us, gave me like something really cool to watch, man. It was tantalizing, it was engaging. It's good versus evil and follow your heart and having your heart broken and everything. They created a very, very, very good romance drama and stuff. And you have to give it up to the creators and stuff. They took a huge risk by deviating from history, but it paid off because they made a very juicy show, and it was one of the best shows on the CW and stuff. Now, when it goes into that of the second season, they're having to deal with that of the Black Death. Like I said before, in 1550 didn't happen. In 1540, 1560, it did happen in France and stuff. But that storyline only happens for the first couple of episodes. And it's a way for them to get rid of characters that they're kind of like, we don't really know what to do with this character. Let's just get rid of them. Happy Women's History Month, everybody. All right, well, I'll talk to you later. Bye.